Hello guys! Today I will teach you how to factor polynomials using the greatest common factor or GCF. Our first example is 10x plus 14. So let's go to step number 1, which is find the GCF of the coefficients. Now 10 and 14 are our coefficients. We will get the GCF of the coefficients using the ladder method. 10 and 14. So, what number can be divided to 10 and 14 evenly? So, 2 can be divided evenly. So, we'll put 2 over here. Then, divide 10 by 2. So, 10 divided by 2 is equals to 5. 14 divided by 2 is equals to 7. Since 5 and 7 have no more common factor except 1, then 2 is our GCF. Now let us move on to our next step. Step number 2. So for step number 2, we will find the GCF of the variables. So x is our variable. And since 14 doesn't have a variable, then the GCF of the variables is 1. Now, for step number 3, we will get the GCF of the whole polynomial. So how do we do that? We will multiply the GCF of the coefficients, which is 2, to the GCF of the variables, which is 1. So, 2 is the GCF of the whole polynomial. Now let us move on to our next step. Step number 4, which is divide every term in the polynomial by the GCF. So you see the GCF of the whole polynomial is 2. So we'll divide every term by 2. So 10x divided by 2, we will divide this, the coefficients. So 10 divided by 2 is equals to 5. Then get this. So 14 divided by 2 is equals to positive 7. Step number 5. We will write the factors properly. So first, write the GCF and then put an open parenthesis. And then write the number that we got in step number 4, which is 5x plus 7. Then close parenthesis. So this is how to factor 10x plus 14. Now let's go to our next example. Our second example is 30a squared plus 12ab. So for our step number 1, find the GCF of the coefficients. So our coefficients are the numbers which are 30 and 12. We will get the GCF of the coefficients using the ladder method. So now, what number can be divided to 30 and 12 evenly? 3 can be divided evenly. So 30 divided by 3 is equals to 10. 12 divided by 3 is equals to 4. Now, what number can be divided to 10 and 4 evenly? There is still a number. It's 2. So 10 divided by 2 is equals to 5. 4 divided by 2 is equals to 2. Now, since 5 and 2 are already prime numbers, they cannot be divided anymore. We will multiply the numbers on the left to get the GCF of the coefficients. So 3 times 2 is equals to 6. Step number 2. Find the GCF of the variables. So here are our variables, the letters, which are a squared and ab. So, let's use a tree diagram to get the GCF of the variables. Now, the factors of a squared are a and a. The factors of ab are a and b. Do you see their common factor? Yes, it's a, but only a. So, a is the GCF of the variables. Now, let's go to our next step. Step number 3. Get the GCF of the whole polynomial. So how do we do that? We will multiply the GCF of the coefficients, which is 6, to the GCF of the variables, which is a. So 6 times a is equals to 6a. And this is the GCF of the whole polynomial. Now let's go to our next step, step number 4. So for step number 4, we will divide every term in the polynomial by the GCF. So here are our terms, 30a squared and 12ab. So divide them by 6a. So now we will divide the coefficients and the variables separately. So 30 divided by 6 is equals to 5. And then a squared divided by a is equals to a. That will be cancelled out. So 12 divided by 6 is equals to positive 2. And then AB divided by A is equals to B. The A will be cancelled out. So here's the quotient, 5A plus 2B. Step number 5, our last step. We will write the factors properly. So write the GCF first, which is 6A, then an open parenthesis, and then write the number that we got in step 4 inside, which is 5A plus 2B, and then close parenthesis. So here are the factors of 30A squared plus 12AB. Now we still have another example. Let's try something harder. Example number 3. Negative 10 p squared q squared r squared plus 30 p squared q r cubed minus 20 p cubed q r squared. So for step number 1, we will find the GCF of the coefficients. So our coefficients are negative 10, 30, and negative 20. So what number can be divided to negative 10, 30, and negative 20 evenly? 5 can be divided evenly. So negative 10 divided by 5 is equals to negative 2, 30 divided by 5 is equals to 6, negative 20 divided by 5 is equals to negative 4. So what number can be divided to negative 2, 6, and negative 4 evenly? 2 can be divided evenly. So negative 2 divided by 2, negative 1, 6 divided by 2, 3, negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. Since negative 1 and 3 and negative 2 are all prime, they cannot be divided any further. We will multiply the numbers on the left. 5 times 2 is equals to 10, and get the GCF. So 10 is the GCF of the coefficients. Now for step number 2. Step number 2 is find the GCF of the variables. Our variables are p squared, q squared, r squared for the first term, and p squared, q, r cubed for the second term, p cubed, q, r squared for the third term. To get the GCF of the variables, we will list their factors. So p squared, q squared, r squared is equals to p times p for p squared times q times q, this is for q squared, times r, this is r squared. And for this next variable, we will also list their factors. So p times p, p squared, times q. Since there's only one q, times r, times r, times r. This is r cubed. So for this next variable 2, p times p times p for p cubed, times q, times r for r squared. So we will only get their common factors. They all have p. They also have another p, so that will be p squared. They have one q in common. They have r, they all have another r, so that will be r squared. So p squared q r squared is the GCF of the variables. Now let's move on to our next step. Step number 3, which is get the GCF of the whole polynomial. So how do we do that? We will multiply the GCF of the coefficients, which is 10, to the GCF of the variables, which is p squared q r squared. So the GCF of the whole polynomial is 10 p squared q r squared. Now let's go to our next step, step number 4. For step number 4, we will divide every term in the polynomial by their GCF. So their GCF is 10 p squared q r squared. We will divide the coefficients and the variables separately. So negative 10 divided by 10 is equals to negative 1. P squared divided by p squared, we will cancel that out. Q squared divided by q, so only q will be left. And then r squared divided by r squared, we will cancel that out. So for the first term, the quotient is negative 1q. We can remove the 1 over here, so it will only be negative q. Negative 1q and negative q have the same value. So let's go to our next term. 30 divided by 10 is equals to positive 3. P squared divided by p squared is equals to 1, so we will cancel that out. Q divided by q is equals to 1, we'll cancel that out. And r cubed divided by r squared is equals to r. Only 1 will be left. So let's go to our next term. Negative 20 divided by 10 is equals to negative 2 p cubed divided by p squared. This will be cancelled out. And the quotient will be p. Q divided by q is equals to 1, cancelled out. R squared divided by r squared is equals to 1, so cancelled out 2. So this is our quotient. Now let's go to our next step. Step number 5. So for step number 5, we will write the factors properly. So we will put the GCF first, which is 10 p squared q r squared, an open parenthesis, and the number that we got in step 4, which is negative q plus 3r minus 2p and close parenthesis. So this is the factored form of negative 10 p squared q squared r squared plus 30 p squared q r cubed minus 20 p cubed q r squared. Our last example is 2a squared times the quantity x plus y plus 3a times the quantity x plus y plus 5 times the quantity x plus y. So let's go to step number 1, which is find the GCF of the coefficients. So our coefficients are 2, 3, and 5. So what number can be divided to 2, 3, and 5 evenly? Since they're all prime, then 1 is their GCF. So the GCF of the coefficients is 1. Now let's go to our next step. Step number 2. Find the GCF of the variables. So our variables are a squared times the quantity x plus y for the first term, a times the quantity x plus y for the second term, and x plus y for the third term. So let's list their factors. So the factor of the first variable is a times the quantity x plus y. And here is a times the quantity x plus y. Here is x plus y. So what do they all have in common? They all have x plus y. So the quantity x plus y is the GCF of the variables. Now let's go to our next step, step number 3. Step number 3. Get the GCF of the whole polynomial. So we multiply the GCF of the coefficients, which is 1, to the GCF of the variables, which is x plus y. So 1 times x plus y is equals to x plus y. Let's put quantity. Now for step number 4. Divide every term in the polynomial by the GCF. We will divide each term by the quantity x plus y. A squared times the quantity x plus y divided by the quantity x plus y is equals to 2a squared. This will be cancelled out. So in here too, it will be cancelled out. The quotient for the second term is positive 3a. The quotient for the last term is positive 5. So here is our quotient. Now let's go to step number 5. We will write the factors properly. Now write the GCF first, which is the quantity of x plus y times 2a squared plus 3a plus 5. Now that is the factored form of this polynomial. That is the end. I hope you guys learned something. Goodbye!